So we're here because last Thursday it was announced in the media that the site across the street from us, 115th and Halsted, would be a temporary asylum seeker shelter site. So I want to give you the background on that. Because no decision has been made, it was never confirmed. The mayor's office reached out to me and said, we'd like to discuss a potential site with you. I immediately reached out to several stakeholders calling for a meeting because, again, I promise you that I don't make decisions alone. I practice shared leadership like I have for almost 17 years now. So we met, and it was about 20 of us in the room. We talked about the site. We shared the issues that we had with it, we have in our community, and the concerns, and the mayor's office took that back. Now, someone in that meeting felt that it needed to be shared with someone outside of that meeting, and so because the mayor did not release any of his sites, that was the only bit of information available. But I know it's a lot of homeowners in here. And when I say nothing about us without us, I mean that. So, just like when you were shopping for your home, you looked at options. Some worked and some did not. It was clear from our meeting that there were several challenges with the site on 115th and Halsted. Still today, there are barriers that have us in the situation where we're at, where there is not a decision made. I'll share those barriers with you. That site is owned by two different owners. And so the city at the time was only talking to one owner. Once they found out that it was a second owner, they reached out to them, and I don't know if you know, but that site is for sale. Additionally, that site, the west side, the east side of it, is scheduled for demolition. So that again was another barrier as to how that site does not work. This is a decision that is made in between the mayor's office and the owners of the site. But what I'm thankful for is that the mayor had enough respect for the 21st Ward to reach out to us first. And so from our meeting, we walked away saying that we would have one more meeting to start developing a strategy and plan for if this were to happen, and then we would have a community meeting. But since it went out, and I did not want you all to be left in the dark, I wanted us to meet here tonight. So let me be clear. At this time, it is not likely that a tent or migrants, asylum seekers, will be housed at that site. And you have my guarantee that if that ever changes, that you will know. So tonight, I want to make sure that you have good information so that you are aware, so that you for yourself can dispute facts, myths, truths, or what folks are saying. Because although this may not be the site, although the 21st Ward may not have one, the number of asylum seekers that is growing in the city of Chicago makes it a possibility for every ward. And I'll share where they are now later in the presentation. But again, I want you to have that information. So let's go to the next slide. So just quickly, giving some background. What is an asylum? Asylum means that you are leaving your country because for persecution, not prosecution, which is a legal term. Persecution, that means that you could be harassed, you are in fear of your life, and so forth. This is a defined process. It does not mean that folks are simply just arriving in Chicago. So we're going to talk a little bit about that process. They apply for it, and they seek entry into the U.S. at an entry port. Now, those entry ports are often borders, such as Texas, Colorado, and other places. Let's go to the next slide. So, after the news had reported it, the mayor had a briefing that week. And that's where all aldermen found more and more of the information. What he asked us to do was to find 2 to 3 sites in all of our wards and to circulate the requests for proposals so that Chicagoans can fill those out and have an opportunity to be awarded those contracts. The current RFP that is out is an RFP that allows for someone or an entity to run, essentially, shelter operations. Let's go to the next slide. How are they getting here to Chicago? So again, they are leaving their homes because they fear for their life, essentially. They are leaving their homes because they essentially fear for their life. They use a Darien Gap. They use a Darien Gap road that is probably one of the most dangerous roads in the world to arrive at a border. It's about a 10 to 15 day journey travel. At that point, the Customs and Borders Protection Unit takes them in, and then they interview them to see if they are eligible for asylum. After that point is when the Texas governor and the governor of Colorado start sending folks to Chicago. It is a ploy because they believe that Chicago will look bad when the Democratic National Convention comes. And so, literally, at the moment in which Chicago got announced, that is when the increase happened. When I took office, and shortly thereafter, the number had dropped to about, I would say, under 400. We are well beyond that, and I'll share the exact number in a bit. Let's go to the next slide. So how many are here? 13,500 plus. 2,844 are minors, and that only consistently grows. We work to get the best information possible. So when folks are leaving Texas, we try to get a count of how many are on the bus and how many buses are coming. And again, these buses have been coming daily. Next slide. Where are they going? So, when they get here, they are going to checkpoints that we have in the city. Those have looked like O'Hare Airport and Midway, Union Station, and the police stations. In fact, our police stations are seeing over 2,000 in the 22 districts, 21 out of the 22 districts that are there. There are 18 shelter locations all throughout the city of Chicago. They are in every part of the city, with the exception, honestly, of the far south. The furthest one is in Ford City community area at 79th. But you can see that they are in the Loop, that they are in the Gold Coast in downtown, that they are in Edgewater, that they are in Rogers Park, and so forth. Next slide. And so this map is a visual representation of where they are. Look, it's not the best to see here. Let me share some of the color coding. The green that you see are those checkpoints. Union Station, Midway, O'Hare. The purple, I'll start with the blues. The blues are the 22 police districts that are all throughout the city of Chicago. And the purple are the 18 shelters that you see without the city. And again, the last one, my picture is kind of covering it here, but is the Ford City one near 79th. Next slide. There's been a discussion about tents and if they are even adequate to house folks. So I won't spend a lot of time on this, but I want you to know what these look like. They are FEMA Red Cross military tents, temporary structures. They can house, or they have different populations of housing per tent, considering the makeup of it, but they can withstand winds of 90 miles per hour in a hurricane. They have their own heating, they have their own AC, they have their own ventilation, they have their own water. They give opportunities for kitchens, they give opportunities for restrooms, they give opportunities for washers and dryers. These are currently in New York. So that's where it has been tested, and that's why the city is looking at it as an option. Next slide. So, what is the city of Chicago doing to house Chicagoans who are here now? This was just a question that I asked yesterday in our budget hearing, because obviously there's been a lot of conversation. We talked about the federal government stepping up. So, the city of Chicago applied for a federal grant that has restrictions on how it can be spent. It is $33 million that come from the federal government that can only be spent on migrants. It comes from FEMA. So there has been conversations about that, but my colleagues in the Black Caucus has asked the question, what are we doing to increase the efforts about Chicagoans that are here now? And this is what they reported out. So, the Emergency and Transitional Housing Grant received $4.3 million from the Illinois Department of Housing. This year, the state appropriated more funds for homelessness, $9.8 million. The Department of Family and Support Services, DFSS, applied for an expansion funding targeted to get more people off the streets and into the shelters. Hence, the award was $3.67 million for winter shelters, and there were conversations about turning shelters into overnight shelters. Additionally, Illinois Department of Human Services received a HUD, the Federal Housing and Urban Development Revolutionary Grant, which all increases only if the formula increases. So it's something that's tied to a formula as that arises, the more funding becomes available. DFSS received the Community Development Block Grant funds through the city's process, along with another federal funding source through the state. Additionally, corporations are helping out with funds, and in 2020, there were 1,800 households that were supported with $35 million with a combination of the American Rescue Prepared Act funds An additional 30 million house 1,400 individuals. And then 400 individuals were housed with accelerated moving events, and HUD gave another allocated, received 60 million in shelters from homelessness. Now, I have asked that this narrative has to go out, because all that you get is that there's more and more being done for migrants. So that is unfair. That is unfair to the residents that are here now. Next slide talks about the rules and exceptions or expectations that are there for shelter residents. I asked this question to learn more about what it looks like, because reports that I was getting was saying that like it's just a free-for-all. So I first wanted to know the rules before we make sure that the rules are enforced. So upon leaving or entering the facility, clients must sign in and sign out with the front desk staff. Clients must abide by 11 p.m. curfew. After the curfews, the clients may not leave the facility except for reasons approved by staff or in the case of an emergency. Clients may not have visitors within the facility. Drug and alcohols are not allowed on the property. If alcohol or drugs are found, the items are to be confiscated, discarded, and that if this continues, then the shelter staff has a right to conduct a search of all client belongings. Clients must respect the entire property and treat it carefully, and residents can be discharged for a violation of these rights. So, I also asked the question of, is this mission of being a welcoming city taking away resources from homeless individuals? The city responded and said they have not diverted funding from the homeless shelter system to support new arrival missions, and that they are working to enhance and expand services. They'll continue to invest in new long-term homeless solutions, including developing new non-congregate shelter spaces and increasing permanent supportive housing options. Then I asked the question, next slide, about what are the business and contract, next one, what are the business and contract opportunities? So right now, there's a request for a proposal for a Chicagoan or Chicago-based company entity to run the operations at one of the, at some of the temporary shelters that, the 18 list that I gave earlier. That request for proposal is out. There will be more to come. There will be opportunities for folks who are in the culinary business to have a contract with the city to provide food. There will be an opportunity for folks who do things like fencing to contract with the city. There will be opportunities for folks who do security to have contracts with the city. It's part of my responsibility to make sure that you not only have that information, but the access to it so that we can increase your odds of winning those contracts. I've also asked about special or preferred vendors as it relates to local to the areas that it serves. Next slide. One of the questions that also came up about this was, wait, I thought that there was a development plan for 115th and Halsted. And that is still the case. We are planning to break ground on Morgan Park Commons 2024. I have learned, no, you can clap for that, because I learned how long this site has been vacant. And so I just wanted to give you, we'll have a full presentation on Morgan Park Commons, because as I understand that this has been brought before the community before, this information comes from Department of Planning PowerPoint that is dated in 2022. So Morgan Park Commons is a housing project development What I want to stress here is that particularly on the far south of our ward, we are predominantly single families. We do not have multi-units or a lot of multi-units family homes. What does that mean for you? Well, you've already been experiencing it. As folks has moved on or passed on, investors have bought their properties and then rented them out. And then you call my office and say this person is not being a good neighbor, not being a good tenant, they have not cut their grass, they do other things and so forth. And that's again because we don't have a real rental unit. That's one. Two, when I look at the demographics of our ward, we are very much a mature, aging, senior, elderly ward. We have to start coming up with a strategy about what is going to happen to those homes. So a will is not enough. Let me tell you that. A will is not enough. Because although it's well intended, what happens is when you transition on and you send it to your loved one, they are immediately hit with a tax bill that oftentimes they cannot pay. And then you lose the property for taxes. So we are also going to be talking about how trust can work in our favor, and that how we can make our loved ones the beneficiaries of those trusts so that that property can stay within the family and not be lost. As we develop, I'm not naive to not know that prices of things will go up. Your property values will go up, and that's what a lot of people want, but that also means that your taxes will go up, and if you're a renter, that means your rent is going to go up. We cannot have development with displacement in this ward. You all have sacrificed too much. You are the reason why we are still standing, why we are still as beautiful as we are, because you have maintained that. And so as these things that you are well and deserve of come to the ward, I don't want you to have to look or live outside of the ward to find somewhere to go. So this project helps bring forth a lot of housing. And I don't know if you've heard people say this before, but we are the largest ward in the city.
About a list.
And that is in part due to how this ward has lost, according to the census, so whether you didn't fill it out, whether your cousin moved to the suburbs or somewhere else, or whether you lost a loved one. It was reported that this area lost more than 10,000 people. And again, we are predominantly single family homes, so that automatically means we have to go more blocks to get the population that we need. Each ward has roughly 54,000 residents. And so, we have to make sure that we have a housing market here. We're going to go through just a couple of these slides. I just want you to see some of the renderings and so forth. The community concerns that were discussed around this. Of course, safety, affordability, and we'll share this project as well. Again, we're going to have a much more detailed presentation on this, but I want to make sure that you all were aware of this because this predates me. And so I want to always have those checkpoints of making sure that folks are aware. The next slide just again show you, so as you can see that development is planned for the entire site. It's another one that gives a close-up on it, the different phases of it. This is a view from the trail, and this is a view from right there if you're looking towards the Walgreens and so forth. Next slide. So some of the things that I'm going to be working on over the next few months, where I'm going to need your support and I'm going to need your help, is one, community engagement. I'm glad to see folks here. This is probably the most well-attended 21st Ward meeting in history. So thank you for coming out. I need you to keep coming out. Support services. You cannot tell me that the issues that migrants face, that we don't face. And so when we talk about those supportive services, I need that same infrastructure in our ward to service our folks. And I'm going to be looking for resources to invest into our community partners that are already doing that work. Then also education. So, asylum seekers are coming here and they are having challenges with education. We also see challenges in our own community when it comes to literacy rates and math and so forth. I'm going to be working to make sure that we have a plan in place so that, again, these resources cannot just be for migrants alone when we have been suffering from these issues for years.
Better listen.
And then economic opportunity and diversification. So we talked about these contracts that are coming online, these RFPs and so forth. There are going to be new jobs. There are going to be more lines of opportunity open. There's going to be a stronger workforce. This is something that we've already been aiming for because we know we have the red line extension coming and other projects that we have to make sure we have the workforce building now, because in 2025, I believe it is when we break ground on the red line extension that just got a $2 billion investment from the federal government. That same project that 22 years ago Reverend Love walked into the federal government's office and submitted the application, and they told him 30 years, we're on track for that.
Wow.
So we have to be prepared for these things. And I'm hoping that this won't be my last time seeing you, because I can't do this work alone. I don't even think you would want me to do this work alone. And so, I'm going to be here. I'm going to take questions. We're going to do this two ways. If you want to use the mic, I think you can line up here, and you can line up here. If you want to write a question, you can do so. And I'll read that. I'll rotate.
Long resident of the far south side, and two points. First, because I actually sit on the Illinois call around housing migrants every Wednesday that happened this morning. $33 million is chump change because they're spending $30 to $50 million a month on this issue. And I just want people to know that federally, that $33 million is chump change. They are spending $30 to $50 million a month on this issue. And I recognize that it is it's a humanitarian crisis. I recognize that, but we will not be played in the city of Chicago as Black people by the federal government about how they are not addressing this issue properly. So I just want to put that out there. But you stated that the mayor asked each alderman to identify 2 to 3 sites. What sites have you identified to give back to the mayor? Because we can talk about this development all day long. That's 5 years from now. What sites immediately have you proposed that we might see asylum seekers here in this ward?
I'll start with the $33 million because we asked that question in the budget committee. The $33 million will pay for essentially the balances that are left over for, is this better? The 33 million will pay for the balances that are left over from this month and carry us into November. So
That was a comment.
Right, because we just saw the budget pass. We $500 million right now not making the mayor's budget, so we get that. We just want to make sure that everybody in this room knows that that $33 billion is a Band-Aid on the bullet wound. So.
right. I'm not disagreeing with you. We're going to keep going back every point in time because it's literally building the plane as it's being flown. So that's why I'm keeping everybody updated on what's happening. Two, when you talk about alternative sites, I honestly don't know. When I started this conversation, I really thought the 21st Ward was safe because we didn't have the opportunity. The only closed school that is in the 21st Ward is Garrett A. Morgan near 84th and Vincennes. It is inhabitable. You cannot go into that building and set up things. Anyone who has come in to ask about it and has worked with the Chicago public schools to tour it sees that they say it should be demolished. I don't know if that's going to be the case. This was a surprise to me, but was thought to be a possibility with the options of tents. We learned on the call that they're looking for like about 2 acres of land, concrete or asphalt or extremely leveled. So that is how that site even came up. But I don't know anywhere else in the ward that that's an option.
I have a lot more questions, but it's other people, and I'm not coming out loud.
Hi, I wanted to know if there is a capacity limit, and what is that limit if there is one, and why can't we close the borders of Chicago or the state of Illinois in the first place? Why can't we close the borders?
I don't know if there's a limit. I do know that when you are seeking asylum, you are granted protections from the U.S. to not return. So that is the process that folks are going through when they come here, when they get their interview, and then the Texas governor sends them to Illinois, and specifically Chicago.
So they get to come, once they do an interview in Texas, they get to come regardless. Texas says, you're an asylum seeker, you're being persecuted, so yeah, you can leave your country and come here and go wherever you want.
Not Texas. The federal government is the one that does the process around asylum seeking. It is Texas who is making the decision to send them to Chicago.
And that's what I wanted to know. Can we say, no, we won't take anymore?
It has to come from the federal government. That's why you hear the mayor say we need all levels of government. That's why you've heard everybody from the mayor to the governor to the senators. They had a press conference in which they called for action from the federal government.
All right, next.
Upstairs.
Good evening. I just want to know, are you telling us that the 115th Street site is off the table?
Permanently, no.
Okay, that's what we want to hear.
Here are the barriers again is ownership. East Side had a permit application to demo their structures. I don't know how you have anything next to something that's being demolished. There's also the planned development that we expect to break ground in 2024.
I want to start by saying, hello? Okay. There are no resources coming to the people of the city of Chicago. in this ward. I ran for alderman of this ward with everybody else. And when we filed our petitions, Ronnie Mosley was #1 with the signatures. I was #2 out of the race with 14 people in it. I got kicked off the ballot because I had a fist fight in my background. And I got kicked off the ballot. So my thing is, Governor Pritzker and the mayor has went to the government and asked them to fast track the work permits, thank you so much, the work permits for these illegal immigrants because they are not asylum seekers because they did not go through the process. So, where's my fast track? I went through the clemency process and my clemency is still sitting on his desk. He needs to fast track what he got authority to do before he goes to the government asking them to fast track for these immigrants. Okay. He said that he don't have the labor force to do the work. So that's why he's trying to fast track these work permits for these immigrants. But he has thousands and thousands of clemencies sitting on his desk for people that have served their time and say that y'all giving second chances, but we haven't had a second chance. I haven't had a second chance. Where's my second chance? Before they get anything done or any work permits, where's mine?
When
That's not his, that's above him.
we have to realize that folks are coming home.
But you gotta be a voice for us.
They also need, in addition to some place to stay, work. They need to return to work so that their lives can be productive and they can go on. They've paid their dues to society. They have done their time. They served their time. I'm interested in partnering with my colleagues at the Black Caucus level to push for these efforts. It's something that has to be done at the city level, but also, like you said, the state level. And so that accountability, I believe, is something that we have 20 members of the Chicago Automatic Black Caucus is something that we can fight for.
I have one more thing to say. I just got hired at American Airlines, and the only thing stopping me from getting this job is my clemency. But he's saying that he want to give these illegal immigrants guns to become police officers, and that's going to come out and arrest people in our community.
Yeah,
And
I'll
the
say
police
that.
station stealing the walkie-talkies.
I'll say that I have a hard time believing that the 21st Ward, who has the largest membership of black police and firefighters, and that number has been attempted to grow, that someone who is seeking asylum could be more qualified than folks who have been testing and training for years. So that, again, I sit on the police and fire committee for the city, and that's one of the issues that I'm pushing as well. Is how do we replenish the ranks? Because majority of the folks who are there can retire tomorrow. Do we have any?
You've had your 2 minutes, man.
We have an Asian community, and now the immigrants come here.
You need to speak into the mic, sir.
They have no kind of shots or nothing. What about an outbreak? When our people get sick for polio, our children for measles, because they haven't had their shots. And
You don't know that.
And then we'll get sick, the person died, they die, then the developer take our properties.
So this is a good example of how government, this question was around health, vaccinations, and so forth as it relates to asylum seekers. This is where there has been a good actual partnership between different levels of government. The Cook County has been kind of the real medical officer for asylum seekers, just how they are for most who are uninsured or underinsured. So they are actually partnering with the checkpoint sites to go through health examinations and so
I
forth.
have one more question. Okay, now, all of the money that is going to the asylum seeker, how come we can't get reparations and we pay no taxes? And then we pay no taxes and we can do free health care. You can't say you can't do it because you're doing it right now.
Please talk into the mic, sir.
His question was around, and let me say this, again, I'll be here until the pastor closes his doors. So if you have another question after your initial question, just hop back in line. His question was around reparations. From my understanding, the city put forth a committee or commission on reparations. I don't know the current status of it, but it's something that I can take back and report out on.
Don't speak on it.
I'm sorry, upstairs.
And they have to travel public housing. What about these undocumented asylum seekers? They don't have ID. They don't have fingerprints. We don't even know who they are.
That's not true. So again, the process starts at the border. Folks are not just crossing the border and jumping on the bus that's taking off. They are going through a process at the border, and then also when they get here as well.
What are you doing to ensure that the safety of the people as they travel to and forth? And they got all this money that they allocated for them, but where's our money that's supposed to be allocated for our people? We got all these homeless people that's already here, and we're not doing anything about it, and then veteran is really mentally ill, etc., etc., etc. Our children are exposed to people that they can't even identify. They're not fingerprinted, they're not background checks on them. They just can't get any help, and we understand that we have a deluge of people. We don't just have a couple of hundred. We have hundreds of people being flooded in our community. And how is that safe for the ones that's here? And if we overflood, we don't have the money. That's 3 questions. Why did they put a cap on it?
I mean, I'm trying to pick your questions. I'm going to ask you to get back in line. Right here.
My name is Phyllis Wells. I'm the living block of 107th Place. I've been in this area since 1967.
One meeting, please.
My question is, you said it's not written in stone for 115. You also said the mayor said give you 2 or 3 sites. If you do not give him 2 or 3 sites, and you do not give him 115, would he accept no?
It has to be, even, we can give sites. It has to be sites that work. I am not aware of sites that work.
We don't want sites.
If anybody wants to give recommendations, then that's fine, but I am not aware of alternative sites in the 21st Ward.
One and done.
Speaking to the mic, please, ma'am.
My question is this: we just saw where the shelter people, they had rules about they had to do this, they had to do that. Is there one for those other people that you guys are trying to house? Do they have a rules too? Because the reason I'm asking, do they have rules? And it could be the media, like you're saying, but I've heard some horrific stories about those people. So if the shelters for us have rules, we need to know the rules for them too. If we have a site or not, I still would like to know what rules are in place for them.
So I believe the question was, we saw rules for folks who are in shelters. Are there rules for folks who are not in shelters? Folks who are not in shelters have been at the police stations. That's the 2,000 plus number that you see. I do not know if the same rules apply to the police station. I can say that I believe it's in part of why there's a push to restore our police stations.
Well, even the 18 sites, you know that they...
The 18 sites have those rules.
Oh, those are the rules for them.
Those are the rules for the shelters, the 18 shelters.
Uncompassionate or whatever. But the thing that sticks in my craw to this day is why are we doing all of this for these set of immigrants when the Haitians came over here?
One minute, please.
Her question was about differentiation between certain populations from other origins versus those from Haiti. So I actually met yesterday, along with a couple of my colleagues, about folks who are migrating from Africa to learn about their challenges. They're similar. Just like we have a lot of folks coming from South America whose primary language is Spanish, and they look multiple complexions. But Haitians, like, there's still French is a language, that a barrier that is there. Creole is another. Wolof is another. So what I'm sharing with you is there are Haitians and other countries of origins that are migrating here as well. It is the current situation in Venezuela, which is why there is this uproar or mass movement from that country of origin to the U.S. borders.
Hello, I'm a resident of the ward, over 50-something years. I have a two-part question. We're concerned about development in our ward, for number one. For number two, the safety. The police radios are missing right now because immigrants got the gun. They taking guns in the police station. If we already overloaded with crime, we don't want them out here.
That's my question.
Under no circumstances. The other part, we don't want to be an answering state.
I didn't hear the last part.
We do not care to be an Asylum state. And we see immigrants.
Oh, okay. A sanctuary city. To be a sanctuary city.
Can y'all work on that, please?
She wants to make sure that the development continues in the ward. She wants to make sure that development continues in the ward. I agree with that. She brought up the point that
there seems to be a disconnect between what we're seeing, right? Like all of these multi-millions of resources pouring in and funding and so forth for housing, work permits, and blah, 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 for the asylum seekers. But what we're seeing in our communities are them just kind of piled on top of each other near police stations, meandering around in confusion. So it feels like a disconnect, like all of these resources, but then what we're seeing. So I just want to say that is inhumane, okay? To pile people on top of each other, it is. So it doesn't seem like there's a set plan for them in observation in real time, you know? But my question is, what are the economic opportunities for property owners? And reparations now for Black American, U.S. descendants of chattel slavery.
as it relates to her question was, what is the economic opportunity for property owners as it relates to asylum seekers? Catholic Charity has a program in which they are paying rents to help asylum seekers become settled. That information is online. We can share it on our platforms to make it more readily available.
We're already distressed.
Todd. The decision is not necessarily one with the alderman.
One meeting, please.
Here's how I can give you examples on that. Just like if you are a business owner and you are looking for a space, if that space is already set up and so forth, you can open in and my office won't know until you apply for your business license. The city can go to a private owner and execute a contract. It is what has happened to some of my colleagues. The calls that they got were a little bit different. Hey, we signed a contract. You're having the shelter open Friday. So, one, I'm appreciative again. This has been a collaboration from the mayor. His office could have just said, this is happening. He reached out to us first. I asked to bring more folks to the table. That was welcome. We are having this conversation almost in theory because someone from that meeting decided that somebody else needed to know. We couldn't even figure out things. I said, again, we're gonna have another meeting to try to develop a plan for if this happens. But we left that meeting saying this site doesn't work. And still today, that site does not work.